What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the data points, break it down on what moved it and what to expect tomorrow. Before we get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi did close in the green 1.7%, 28.48 the low, 29.70 the high, and 51.2 million shares being traded. So today was quite the interesting day. Gotta admit, in comparison to a lot of other growth stocks, like SoFi and other fintechs, they lagged. You had a lot more speculative stocks really just moving higher, so people's appetite for risk was definitely increasing, so the market's pivoting to more risk on, and a lot of that has to do with the data. So for instance, early this morning we had challenger job cuts and also initial jobless claims. Even though both came in better than anticipated, and especially in initial jobless claims case, came in at 191 versus a forecast of 220, hasn't been that low since pretty much the beginning of the year. So this is actually good data, although it didn't really change the likelihood of this. So still sticking to around the high 80s. So 87% likelihood of a 25 basis point cut is anticipated. You also did have today numerous individuals saying that the Feds are going to be cutting this upcoming meeting. So there's a lot of high expectations now. One thing also that did come out throughout the trading day, which will be a very big catalyst tomorrow, is this. So Trump to kind of talk trade with Mexico and Canada. And this is something that we haven't really heard many updates on in a while. So potentially if there is, let's say, a cut to some of these tariffs, you could see the market really move higher. And then also we do have tomorrow a lot of big data. So we have PCE and also Michigan consumer sentiment. So tomorrow will be a very big day, and especially in SoFi's case, potentially getting added to the S&P 500. That could be a pretty big catalyst in among itself. So tomorrow is going to be a massive day for the market and as well SoFi. Today there wasn't really any news, no SEC filings. So as well, I think the market was also digesting the recent fireside chat that did happen that Chris spoke about. Kind of went over some of the highlights yesterday, and plus I did post it on my channel on the side note in case you kind of missed it. But again, that was also one thing that was really influencing SoFi. Aside from that, looking at shorts. Shorts did return 120,000 shares, 9.9% of the free floats being shorted. Works out to be 117.2 million shares overall being shorted. Shorts at the peak, they were increasing around 292,000, so they were relatively quiet throughout the day. So most likely they're going to be waiting for tomorrow just to see how everything does play out for data points and everything like that. Of course, as I've mentioned, I have a lot of different YouTube channels, many stocks that are heavily shorted. At one time or another, I've brought up how the SEC transparency rule was going to help the broader market and help a lot of these heavily shorted stocks kind of get them off of their backs, because the whole SEC transparency rule was going to force 13Fs to disclose both long and short positions. Regrettably, this came out yesterday from the SEC tweeted. So today, the SEC extended the compliance dates for Rules 13F-2 and Rule 10C-1A, ultimately pushing it back to January 2nd, 2028 for the 13Fs, and then March 29th, 2029 for the loan component. So it is fair to assume that most likely all of this is never going to come to fruition, because the timing of this, it's going to be right before kind of the election talk, and everyone's going to be focused on that. There won't be anything like this kind of put in place prior to that. So in my opinion, none of this is going to come to fruition, which is rather unfortunate. But looking at the options for today, 31 million in calls, 6.9 in puts, and then 46% of all the options being done were bullish in nature. From a bull standpoint, you kind of see a consensus for it to be roughly around $30 to $31. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub kind of 28. So maybe they're anticipating some negative data tomorrow and for things to push lower. With tomorrow being Friday, just take a mental note. This is all the open interest. So with us right now at the 29.50. So some of the close ones, you have 10,000 at the 29.50, 10,000 at the 29, 9,000 at the 28.50, 22,000 at the 30, and so forth and so forth. So if SoFi for whatever reason does get added to the S&P 500, which in my opinion I don't think it will happen, but if it does, you could potentially see a nice gamma squeeze as a byproduct of that. For those of you that tune into a lot of my videos, yesterday was abnormal. So for whatever reason, SoFi did lag a lot of the other fintechs and just generally the broader market. And you had a lot of institutions selling for whatever reason. I'm not really sure why, maybe just profit taking or something else. But today was completely the polar opposite. You had a lot of institutions actually buying. So 42.7 million, 13.5, 10.5. That one was a sell. 10.1, 2.6, 2.2, and so forth. So a lot of big money was buying today. Why it kind of went from yesterday to today, I don't know. I wish I could tell you on why. Maybe there was something that was mentioned during the fireside chat that institutions didn't really like, or potentially maybe they just saw SoFi as just being too overdone. There could be a lot of different attributing factors. These are some of the kind of big transactions on the dark pool today. So rather quiet. There was a 6.2, that was the largest one, done roughly around noon. And then you had a 6 million. So it looks like shorts, again, didn't really do too much, as I've already mentioned. But with it closing at 29.60, it is trading between these 2 points. So this R1 and the pivot, so 28.37 and then 29.94 is going to be the next strong kind of support and target. So just keep that a mental note of a lot of these, and especially again, if SoFi does get added to the S&P, then 30.90 and then 32.47 as next strong kind of points targets. Aside from all of that fun stuff on the actual chart, things are still looking pretty good. Only negative is the fact that it's now overbought. So again, if you see some negative news, whether it be macro or specific to SoFi, you could see some consolidation, but as long as it doesn't break below that 50-day moving average, and that's sitting at 28.19, then things are still looking pretty good. There really hasn't been that much in real kind of articles or anything like that. You did have Mizuho kind of downgrade today, so their highest rating, which was $38, that did get lowered down to 31. $1 million question again is why, but you also did have at the same time JP Morgan increasing to 31, and they were from $24. So you kind of have whatever, 31 seems to be the magic number, so maybe that might be again coming to fruition. So let me know your general thoughts on SoFi. There was a hell of a lot of things that did come out that influenced it, both mostly positive. The only negative again was the SEC transparency rule, but I think generally people don't really trust the SEC as much as, or so I don't know, maybe just people didn't ever believe that this was going to come to fruition. Maybe it was just a rubber stamp. Someone said, hey, I did something for my job to justify it, and that's it. So at the end of the day, it is what it is, but I think generally there's a lot of big catalyst for tomorrow. So a lot of big data that could move it. So PCE, Michigan Consumer Sentiment, and then potentially some trade updates with Mexico and Canada. So let me know your thoughts. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which I have been putting out have been on point and bangers. Today, this one right here was a huge one. So this one went up 24.36%. So I've been really talking about this one quite significantly. And this one, yeah, it's been a hot one. So definitely worthwhile to pop over there. I put out a lot of these kind of quieter names that have a lot of upside, that generally don't get heavily manipulated or anything. So definitely worthwhile to kind of pop over to my account. Plus I just launched a new tier that is $15 just for swing trades. So again, definitely worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.